This is Rostra, the St. Theodore Guerin Junior Classical League podcast, where we bring the lessons of classical study into the light for the benefit of all. Well, welcome back to another episode of Rostra. We are so excited again to have two guests. And I think this season, one of the features, I feel like we've had more dual guests this season than we had last year. I think we had maybe a couple times we had two guests on the show. So today we've got Maisy Svec and Sydney Delagrange talking about, again, a topic that everybody's going to be able to relate to. Some of our topics, let's be honest, are maybe a little strange, mythology or something like that. But this is one everybody can relate to because you ladies are talking about what?
Roman families.
Roman families. So we always like to start off, why did you choose that topic? I mean, there's so many things you could talk about in terms of ancient Roman culture. You two picked Roman families. Why was that?
Because like you said, we can relate to it, and it's just interesting to see how they lived their day-to-day lives with their family and how much different it is from ours.
And how different it is, right? And so obviously there's similarities, right? There's moms, there's dads, there's children. But this is a culture that is 2,000 years ago. It is half a planet away from where we are here in Middle America. So talk to us about some of those differences. What are some things that really struck you as being, wow, that's not how our families work, or I didn't know that about their families?
The oldest male was usually in charge of the household, but the woman/wife was usually controlling the money and stuff, which I thought was interesting because women back then usually didn't have a lot of power.
So you've hit on a couple things here. Now, did you happen to find the terms for that head male or that head female?
I actually couldn't.
In the family. That's actually something we talk about up in second year Latin. And we should note that both of you are in first year Latin, so this will be something you'll be touching back on next year. But that head male you were talking about is called the pater familias, literally father of the family. The head female, the mater familias, or mother of the family. And so let's talk about each of those. So start off with the mater familias. You said she was in charge of money. And talk to us a little bit more about anything you found about her or any of her kinds of responsibilities or anything like that.
She usually stayed in the household and taking care of the children. She didn't really go out and do a job like the husband would. He would go and work and stuff.
Right.
But she would just stay in the house and clean and take care of the kids.
Well, that, but also oversee the staff. Now, we've had another episode about this, and we can't sugarcoat things. We can't pretend history was better than it was. The Romans did have the institution of slavery, horrible as that was. But part of her job would be, yes, to do some of those duties, but also to oversee the duties of the household slaves to make sure that everything is being done right. Obviously, taking care of the children, overseeing the food. Hey, do we have enough? Have the slaves gone to the market? Have they purchased the food? Preparing the food? All that kind of stuff. Really quite a bit of authority in terms of running the family. Now, talk to us about the pater familias. So you say this lead male. What's he all about?
He would be in charge of the household, and he would just get the money.
Obviously, and you mentioned this, right? You mentioned about him being the one going out and working, doing whatever job to bring in income. It's almost, you don't want to say, but he almost ruled the family, all right? And this included the extended family, so other branches of the family as well. He was in charge of making sure that everybody worshiped the gods, worshiped the family gods, something we were actually just talking about recently in class, the household gods. He would make sure that the family did all of that. He was the one who would give a daughter away in marriage. And interestingly, he was the one who said whether a baby would be allowed to live or not. So when a Roman baby was born, the pater familias would look at the baby, and it was kind of your basic quick check. Do we have 10 fingers, 10 toes? Is the baby crying, which means the lungs are working well? Everything seems to be in good working order. Father says, absolutely great, we're going to keep the child. If the father, especially the head of the family, thought that the baby, maybe there was something physically wrong, and the baby wouldn't have a good chance for survival anyhow, the father might say, we're going to go ahead and put the child out into nature, basically what we call death by exposure, and just let nature and the elements claim the life of the child. So different set of responsibilities there for the pater familias. And again, some things very, very different from our families. What else did you notice or think was interesting?
I found a fact that poor families would sometimes sell their children into slavery if they couldn't afford to feed them.
Now, I would love to tell you that this does not happen today, but it does. And I would love to think that it didn't happen anywhere in the world, but there are families, I certainly would like to think not in the United States, but we know this exists elsewhere in the world, where families who are in dire poverty, all right, will sell their children into slavery. And so it's a horrible thing. Now, not always was that the case. Sometimes you had a lot of children, maybe couldn't afford, maybe you would put them out to other family members, maybe a wealthier branch of the family who could handle that. Again, something we're going to talk about big in second year Latin is adoption. Romans would often put their children up for adoption. And so maybe there would be a wealthy family who didn't have any children. They'd be willing to adopt. So it wasn't always selling them into slavery, but again, we can't ignore some of the horrible aspects of history. Okay, good. A question, anything similar to modern day, especially modern day American families?
Divorce was common, and it could come from either the husband or the wife.
So there was divorce, and I think that in the ancient culture there was the sense, like really in the modern culture, this is not desirable, this is not the preferred, and so there were kind of a couple of mechanisms to prevent divorce, because yeah, it certainly happened, and definitely happened a lot. One of the mechanisms was that the bride's father would give the groom a certain sum of money, what we call a dowry. And it might be in the form of actual coins, it could be cattle, it could be land, it could be something of value. But if he divorced her, he had to give that money back to her daddy. So there's a little bit of, it's almost like divorce insurance, right? We're going to make sure that you don't divorce my daughter. And then during the early part of the Roman Empire, there was actually legislation and tax breaks for families, trying to keep Roman families together, keep parents married and so forth, because there was a recognition intact families are good for society. We got a lot of divorce. What can we do? Government tries to come in and tries to legislate that a little bit there. So interesting. What else did you ladies find about either what are similarities or differences struck your attention?
I also found that there was a big age gap in marriages. Usually women would marry in their teenage years and men usually married in their mid-20s.
Any idea why? On either end of that. Why the guys tend to be a little bit older, why the girls tend to be a little bit younger?
Because the men already had, they would get their job and then marry.
Okay, part of it is that. And I think in modern American culture, a lot of times today, maybe a couple of young people, maybe they're in college or right out of college, immediately get married, that sort of thing. Yeah, not so much. There was the idea that the man needed to get established, exactly what you just said. Get your job, get some income, get a house, and really start building that foundation before he's ready to get married. Any idea why women would marry younger?
I don't know.
It is simple health care. Childbirth is a challenging thing, and you may know this from a health or biology class. The older women are when they have children, the more health risks there are. And so it's a real simple, just basic kind of fact of medical science, really. When you're younger, you're healthier, you're stronger, right? You're in your prime. And because that was a danger, obviously not having hospitals the way we have and some of the medical care that we have, there was definitely a higher rate of female mortality with childbirth, so the tendency to marry younger there. Good points on both ends of that spectrum there. So all interesting stuff. I'm curious, and this is a question, sometimes I'll ask a variation of this question. Based on what you have seen and read, would you want to be part of an ancient Roman family? You know, sometimes we do these study abroad programs where students will come from one country and they'll do a homestay for a few weeks with a family in another country. If we had a time machine and you could travel back to ancient world, do you think you would want to do a homestay for, say, a month with an ancient Roman family? Why or why not? What would your thoughts be on that?
I'm going to sound very, straightforward for saying this, but they didn't have, cell phones and stuff. And I live from a day-to-day basis with technology, so probably not.
And you know what? I appreciate your honesty on that. And I think everybody listening to this, let's be honest, you're listening to a podcast, either over your computer or your phone, possibly while you're traveling in a car. We live surrounded by our technology, right? We would hardly know what to do without our technology. And so, can you imagine how quiet it would have been? Mm-hmm. Right? I mean, you don't have your Spotify, you don't have streaming services on a TV or whatever.
I don't have Disney Plus.
You don't have Disney Plus? Hello, right? I mean, there's not even Walt Disney, right? So what are you going to do at night? Well, you're going to eat, talk a little bit, go to bed. I mean, that's it. So, okay, fair enough. You would not want to do that. That's Sydney, by the way, who says she would not want to because she would miss her Disney Plus and her cell phone. Maisy, what are your thoughts? Would you want to do a homestay in an ancient Roman family?
Probably not, for the similar reason of technology and it would just be so different. I don't think I'd like it.
Probably because you couldn't use TikTok.
Yeah.
Oh, whoa! TikTok rears its ugly head there. So there you go. So obviously, again, those kinds of shifts there. You know, sometimes it's neat to be in a different culture to learn some different things. Sometimes that culture shift is so big, right? And the culture shock is so strong, it just really makes it difficult. So as we wrap up, anything else that you found in your research that you say, you know what, we want to make sure that we get this on the podcast?
Well, where they would live, the rich families would live in a single-story house that was built around an atrium.
Yes.
And but the poorer ones would sometimes live under theaters, or they would live in something similar to a modern-day apartment, but it would be really run down.
Boy, you bring up a couple big things there. So many people, I think, in a modern world, even if they live in apartments, there's almost the sense that the goal somehow is to live in a single-family dwelling, a single-family house. That was definitely upper class, and exactly what you said. It was usually a one-level home built around a courtyard, very nice, very elegant, but quite frankly, the majority of families are living in apartment buildings. And I don't know how many brothers, sisters, how many people are in your family, but you think about that. What would it be like to live in a one-room apartment?
Horrible.
With your family. Horrible! Right again. There you go, Sydney. Because, who gets to watch the Disney Plus, right? Who gets to, and maybe if you're luxurious, you've got a two-room apartment, right? And so you've got all the smells of the cooking, and if you've got young children, maybe there's crying going on. There's all of that. Very, very different experience in terms of housing. Anything else that you thought, hey, we're going to make sure we put this out on the show?
I also found the fact that sons were important because they carried on the family. If the father had no son, he could adopt one, so then the family line would not die out.
Absolutely, and I hope you remember that for next year when you come back to second year Latin, because we really do talk about adoption. We talk about that very thing. There was a thing about sons carrying on the family name. A lot of cultures still have that today. You certainly see that a lot times in the United States. When people get married, very often the woman will take the husband's name. So it's the family line goes through the man there. And exactly, if somebody didn't have a son, you might adopt. In fact, you might even adopt a fully grown adult. And a lot of times for us, we think about adoption as just for little children. Not necessarily. You often had people who would adopt a fully grown adult because they wanted to pass on their wealth or their power to somebody. So, Ladies, fantastic. This is an outstanding episode. A lot of good information here, and we'd love to have you back on the show sometime. Thank you for listening to Rostra. You may check out all our episodes on Spotify and follow us on social media at GarinJCL. That's at GuerinJCL.